The City Council, please attend the call meeting of the City Council to be held in the 6th floor conference room, 801 Crawford Street, 6 p.m., Monday, September 22nd, 2014, for the purpose of a public work session. In addition, you may consider a motion to go into closed meeting by order of the mayor. Mr. Cherry? Here. Mr. Edmonds? Here. Mr. Meeks?
Here.
Mr. Moody?
Here.
Ms. Simmons? Ms. Randall?
She's here. She's here. She's out of the room.
Mayor Wright? Mr. Rowe?
Thank you, Deborah. We have two items tonight. First is a update on the HRSD consent order. If you recall, back February 25th, we gave you a briefing on that. And at that time, you directed me to tell HRSD that we would like to see a hybrid plan. And most of the members of HRSD said the same thing. So they implemented that. Tonight's a status report.
Hey, how you doing?
Good evening, Vice Mayor, members of the council, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here to talk about our, like John said, about the hybrid plan and where we are. And that process is moving along just like we told you it would back in February. The next step is we are going to be doing a new consent order to replace the one that we currently have, and that's because with the agreement with HRSD, everybody's responsibilities have changed. So I just want to briefly go through that with you, and then if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them with you. So just to give you the historical context, back in 2007 was the original consent order, and that was done with all the localities in the region that HRSD required us to do a lot of investigation. We were going to have to develop our own independent rehabilitation plan as well as a plan to deal with wet weather, so when we had major rain events, and how we were going to handle that in addition to the normal day-to-day operations. The goal was we wanted to reduce the sanitary sewer overflows. That's what the consent order is about, protect the environment, eliminate those from getting into our rivers, streams, and ultimately to the Chesapeake Bay. And it's going to cost us a lot of money, not just Portsmouth, but the region, all the other localities. And so that's what brought about this idea of coming up with an alternative. And so that was what was presented to you. This is what we call this hybrid approach with HRSD. That's what we talked about back in February, where HRSD is going to take over the, and we're going to basically regionalize that wet weather management plan. So they were going to take over the responsibility, doing all the improvements necessary, and be responsible for the wet weather capacity and having the legal responsibility if there were any overflows in the future. And more importantly, they were going to pay for that and pay for all of those improvements. And so we would still own our system, and we did the memorandum of agreement back in February, and that's what we talked about. And that provides a savings throughout the region and a savings to Portsmouth over what we would have had to do in the original plan. So what's happened since we did that? So HRSD, they're under a consent decree with EPA, so they had their consent decree modified to incorporate all of the provisions of the memorandum of agreement that was done with all the localities. And we have had a revised consent order drafted and working with DEQ again to talk about making sure we have the responsibilities clearly delineated, because those have changed from when we had the original consent order. We worked with the city attorney's office with Jeff Miller, has been at the meetings and reviewed that to make sure everything's in order, as all the other localities have as well. And HRSD has begun doing their additional evaluation in the locality systems to make sure where they're going to focus their improvements on, and they've got to develop that regional plan to be submitted in the future. So what does this revised consent order mean? What is it going to do? Again, it's going to supersede the existing one we have because, again, the responsibilities have changed. It's going to reflect those new responsibilities and eliminate the provisions that no longer apply. And these include that HRSD and the localities that we're going to jointly develop. They're going to develop that regional wet weather management plan. They're going to have our input. We're going to work on that together. But they're going to implement it, and they're going to fund it, just like we talked about back in February. We're still required to do that management, operations, and maintenance, that MOM program, if you heard us use that term MOM from before. We're still responsible for maintaining our system. If there are defects, we have a cave-in, things like that, we're still responsible for taking care of those, just as we would be otherwise. And so we had a MOM program developed as part of the original consent order that's been approved by DEQ already, just like the other localities. We'll continue to use that MOM program. We have to do the annual reporting, and we'll continue that as part of this process. The revised consent order provides a level of protection. One of the things that the consent orders are not always bad. Of course, they make you do things, but one of the things, because we're under consent order, provides a level of protection, because as we're going through this, if there will be overflows if we continue to have these really large rain events until all of the system improvements are made. And so it provides a level of protection. We're not going to continue to get in trouble for future things while we're addressing the problem. So that's one of the benefits of having a consent order. It does need to be signed and executed and returned by the 27th of October. So this will be on your agenda, not tomorrow, but in 2 weeks at your October 14th meeting. It will be on your agenda for approval for the manager, to authorize the manager to sign the new consent order. And again, it's the regional consent order is the same one that all the other localities will sign, just like the original one. The next steps is lots of work for HRSD as they continue to develop this plan. Currently, they're doing additional investigation of our systems, and they'll be doing that through next year. They'll be developing that regional wet weather management plan. And they also have to do we put this in here, an alternate analysis report. Basically, when we originally did the consent order, it was looking at, the standard was based on equivalent residential units and the amount of flow. And so now we're switching that, we're doing it gallons per acre per day. And the reason is because if you have a small number of residential units but high flow, it could skew the results. There may not actually be a problem. And so this will normalize and make sure we're really addressing the problems where they exist. And they'll be developing that, and we'll make sure they have good data from us. That's due in August. And then by October of 2017 is when that plan needs to be submitted. And so then at that point we'll know, have a better idea of the cost and what the improvements are, where they'll be, and can better answer questions as far as where improvements are going to be happening, because we don't know that yet, because we're still doing that investigation that's required. And again, we have to continue with rehab and the significant defects, continue our MOM program as we would otherwise. And so that's where we are. And again, this will be on your agenda for in 2 weeks.
What effect does that have on our cost?
The cost, it's the same. It's the same as what we talked about before back in February. We're going to have our costs will increase. I don't have those figures. I can get them back and get them to you. They're not going to increase by as much as they would had we not gone this route. But I mean, with the level of improvements that we're going to have to make and that HRSD is going to have to make, the rates will increase over time, just not to the level that they would have or we would expect it to rise if we hadn't worked this better approach out.
We just need to know what they are so we can...
We do know. We'll resend that report. We send it back
Okay.
The 1st of March.
Okay.
What the amended consent order does is like putting on a flak jacket. It protects us. All right?
Thank you, Brian, very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next up.
Yes, we want to brief you just briefly on the fact that the second quarter appropriation for the schools is on your agenda for tomorrow night. And Carol has worked the numbers with Chris Steele, and so it's good to go. And because the first quarter has not yet ended, it won't end until the end of this month, there is no first quarter report for the schools to give. So that will come sometime in October. Once they look at the first quarter, right, the school administration will do that report, take it to the school board, and then send it to us. You have any other comments?
No, I think that pretty well
Yeah.
covers it.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
John, I know I normally call you, but where are we at with the SIPSA stuff? And I've been getting some calls about SIPSA's trying to talk to Willebrator about pricing, and they want to sub it
Yeah.
out and all that to another source. And the Willebrator plant's worried that they're going to not have a seat at the table when this.
The Willebrator will have a seat at the table because we'll drag them to the table. It's a very viable business for us. And
They just need to sharpen their pencil.
Well, I talked to him about that, and he was saying that SIPS is going out to see what their cheaper prices and different alternatives for different dump sites, so they can come back and compete against.
well, George is a member of SIPSA. George, you want to?
And SIPS is having a meeting on Wednesday. That's the monthly meeting, and they've been working towards the 2018 when all SIPSA either goes away or continues to operate. So there are a lot of moving parts. There haven't been any decisions made, obviously, because it's 2014, but they're working towards it. We'll be glad to give you a briefing on exactly where we are in the individual items. Some of them, of necessity, would have to be in closed meeting because they involve contracts and they involve contractual matters, potential legal matters involving the city.
Why don't we do that?
Yeah, that's fine.
We ought to do that. We'll
Yeah. Well, I mean, I
set a
just
motion
want
to
to
go into close and get some type of update as to where we are with it, because I'm sure everybody's asking
And
questions.
it's a good time for
Right.
you all to, and we have a new member of SIPSA, the governor's appointee, Luke McCoy, and he really is going to be a real asset towards bringing the institutional knowledge that he has to the table, and I think it'd be important for him to be at the meeting too.
Okay, Right, very good. Okay, is that it?
Just one oral report. Councilman Moody asked about mosquito spraying in Churchland. I thought it would be a good opportunity to tell everybody what the status is. Yusuf.
They're all gone. You've killed them all.
Never going to be any
suicide.
They're all gone. They're in Norfolk, right?
I killed 2 of them in my yard yesterday.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Mayor, council members. We are spraying tonight in Churchland, and we also have the plane scheduled for Craney Island tomorrow evening,
Okay.
weather permitting, if it doesn't rain.
Is that the Air Force flight or the?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay, C-130?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good.
Okay?
All right. Very good. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, sir, that's all we have. We have a
Okay.
need for a closed session.
Yeah, we've got a motion here to go into close to discuss a personnel matter. I move to go into a closed meeting pursuant to the provisions of Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711 for the following purpose. Discussion concerning the performance of a city council appointee as permitted under subsection A1. All right, Madam Clerk? Is there a second?
Second.
All right.
Mr. Cherry?
Yes.
Mr. Edmonds?
Yes.
Mr. Meeks?
Yes.
Mr. Moody?
Yes.
Mr. and Mrs. absent. Ms. Randall?
Yes.
Mayor Wright?
Yes.
We are in closed. Thank you.
Thank you.